Hello, everyone. This is another Black Conservative. I am Ryan Boland. Thank you all for joining me. I just read some good news. There's a group that have come here to America that basically wants to teach the young people in the school systems about the evils of socialism and communism. Now, that's good news, especially for someone like me who has been studying about socialism and communism for quite some time, and how that it has been one of the major tools that many of the far left Democrats and Marxists have been using to push upon our country. And even the rhinos, some of the rhinos are doing the same thing. So look, we're going to get right into this article. It's a relatively short article, but I want to read this article because I want you guys to get the gist of what these individuals are saying, and we're going to get into our commentary here. So let's get right into this. And the article starts off, the newly formed Descendant Project seeks to connect those who have fled socialism with America's young people in order to learn about the evils of socialism. Americans are taught about many evil ideologies throughout their schooling today, such as fascism, Nazism, and slavery as other oppressive regimes. But little do they know about socialism, Descendant Project Director Danielle told Breitbart News. This ideology, and get this now, has killed over 100 million people, more than any other in history. And it is the major oppressive ideology that still controls many nations today. Bingo. Over 100 million people have been killed by these socialist and communist regimes. But that's something that the Marxist professors and teachers won't tell the young people, but they will certainly try to tell them that socialism is the best option for America. But let's go on. To fulfill the goal of educating young Americans, the project seeks to, quote, connect those with firsthand insight into authoritarianism, socialism with student audiences, according to their website. DiMartino, whose native country is Nicolas Maduro's socialist Venezuela, explained his project was inspired by a Florida bill signed by Governor Ron DeSantis, this guy's awesome, that requires high school students to learn about the dark histories of both socialism and communism. And let me say something right here. This is very, very good news from Governor DeSantis, because what's interesting about him signing this bill into law is that for so long, a lot of the students in all these schools all over the country are being taught about how good socialism is and how good communism is. And they're being taught that capitalism in America is evil. They're being taught to literally hate America. And that's one of the reasons why when they get out of these colleges and out of these universities, when they graduate, they have so much hate and anger towards the country. It is in part because of what they're being taught in the schools. But let's go on. It's another story and I digress. Let's go on. That bill also requires students to, quote, hear firsthand testimony from immigrants like us who have suffered under socialist regimes abroad. I found out last year about HB2, a bill passed in Florida, which required high schools to include lessons about socialism in the curriculum. More recently, they also required including firsthand testimony from survivors of socialism, he told Breitbart News. I was already traveling to events in colleges to speak about how socialism destroyed my native country of Venezuela and how it changed my life. This is good news, man. This is real good news. I pronounced his name wrong. My apologies. DiMartino explained that in one of his presentations to a Massachusetts public high school, he was convinced that there existed a, quote, moral need to teach young Americans about the evils of socialism, and we had to make it free for schools so they or the speakers didn't have to burden the cost of traveling. End quote. He partnered with Young Voices, a media nonprofit for millennial and Generation X professionals, and launched the Descendant Project in order to, quote, send young survivors from socialist countries to high schools around America at no cost at all, end quote. DiMartino's project begs the question of how a market exists in the United States for what his group is offering and what forces it is fighting against. When asked what the biggest culprits for pro-socialist messaging in America are, DiMartino simply said, and he's right, our own educational institutions, unfortunately. Bingo. Because the socialists and the Marxists, when they infiltrated this country all the way back in the early 1930s, one of the major goals was to infiltrate the institutions and the school systems, simply because that's one of the major institutions. That's where the teaching is pushed in. So what better way to brainwash and dumb down our young people, but through the educational system? But let's go on. I saw it firsthand when I was in college in India, he told Breitbart News. People come out of high school with no knowledge of what socialism did to Eastern Europe or China, or still does to Cuba and Venezuela. And when they get to college, some professors get in their head, absolutely, that socialism is a good thing and the solution to all these problems that America has. They also make sure to lie to Americans about this country being evil and unfair. Now listen to what he says here. Stuff I've been saying and other conservatives have been saying for the longest. He continued, when the reality is that compared to the rest of the world, America is one of the most, if not the most tolerant, prosperous of all the countries. And he's absolutely right. Why do people from other countries migrate here to America? They don't migrate to Russia. They don't migrate, to China. They don't migrate to any of these other countries. They migrate in droves to America. And I'm not saying that people don't migrate to these other countries, but for the most part, they come to America. Why? Because America is, at this point, still a free country. It's still the best country in the world, not because of the people, but because of the Constitution that it was built on. Let's go on. The main problem is that most public high schools simply don't teach about socialism. He added, so teenagers are left vulnerable once they go to college or hear a politician to believe their lies. Yep. They don't know what Holodomor is or the things socialist regimes promise and the rhetoric they use. So they fall for the same lies. And this is exactly what he's exactly right about the rhetoric. Rhetoric is simply what it is, rhetoric. And that's what a lot of these politicians use, especially the Democrats or the so-called Democrats or the Democratic Party that have been largely infiltrated by socialists and communists, okay, is they use rhetoric. They don't tell you the whole truth. See, the devil don't come to you with a pitchfork and horns. He comes to you with a suit and a tie and a briefcase saying, I got some goodies for you. But let's go on. Moving forward, DiMartino plans to expand his project across the country. We are starting with 8 speakers from 4 countries, Cuba, North Korea, Venezuela, and Hong Kong, he explained. We will be traveling to perhaps a couple of dozen schools this academic year, depending on demand. And this year, we will also be recruiting more descendants from other countries not yet represented. Our goal is to be able to provide high schools with the most comprehensive set of first-hand experiences with socialism that was ever made, he continued. What's special about the Descendant Project is that our speakers are young immigrants from socialist countries with unique experiences. Our youth allows us to connect with student audiences even better than any other speaker could, because our message to the students is that they could be in our shoes when they grow up just a few years more. He added, absolutely right. He's absolutely right about that. If we don't change the course and start educating our young people about socialism and communism, which is what a lot of the politicians are trying to push on a local, state, and federal level, and they're using Marxist tactics to do so, we're going to wake up one morning in a socialist government, purely socialist, which will merge into a communist government. I said that before, but let's go on. We're nonpartisan and just want to make Americans feel grateful for their freedom and weary of the ideology that destroyed our native countries. And that's the end of that article right there. But this is real good news. This is real good news. And I think that this is something that needs to be pushed in all the schools. And I think I read this somewhere. I can't remember what source I read this from, but at one point in the early history of America, the schools were teaching about the evils of socialism and the evils of communism, and how and they were teaching about the benefits of free market capitalism. They weren't teaching it was perfect, but they were teaching the benefits of free market capitalism and the evils of socialism and communism. And it's so the students in the early history of America, I think from maybe like the late 1800s and on to the 19th and portion of the 19th century on up to maybe like the 1950s, these concepts were being taught. And so the children generally had a decent education in our country because they were seeing both sides. But right now what they're being taught is that free market capitalism is evil. America is evil. It's racist from its foundation. All these negative things. And then we wonder why the young people have so much hate. It's because it's being pushed in it. It's being pushed. They're being brainwashed. They're being manipulated psychologically by the professors in the schools. Now, it's being done from kindergarten to 12th grade in the regular schools, but it's really being pushed on the college campuses and the universities. That's really what is being pushed, because I talked about this before when the Frankfurt School Marxists, from the Frankfurt School of Marxism in Frankfurt, Germany in the 1920s migrated here to America in the 1930s. And they were assisted by John Dewey, who is considered to be by many researchers to be the father or the founder of progressive education here in America. Not going to get into the details of what progressive education is, but it ain't good. And look, this is where our children are today. Where have they progressed at? What are they progressing to? They're failing in math. They're failing in science. They're failing in history. In comparison to other countries, they're failing miserably. Do you think that's a mistake? No, it's not a mistake. This is a goal of the Marxist professors that goes all the way back to the 1930s. This is one of their goals, is to dumb down, to de-educate the young people, to destroy their history so that they don't know how to fight against the incoming concepts of socialism and communism. You can't fight an enemy if you don't know who the enemy is. You can't defend the country if you don't know how to defend the country. You can't defend the Constitution if you don't know the Constitution. But that's all by design. So when John Dewey assisted these Frankfurt School Marxist professors, what he did was he placed many of these professors strategically in universities all over the country. One of them being Columbus University. And the other, I think, was Harvard. But he strategically placed them all over the country, and they began to grow and push their rhetoric. And then the students that they taught, they grew. They became professors, and they became tenure professors, and they taught the same Marxist ideology. The purpose is to conquer and divide. Conquer and divide is what it is. It's not to educate. It's to conquer and divide and brainwash the young people into accepting socialism and eventually communism over free market capitalism. That's the goal. That's the goal. And they're winning to some extent. But thank God for this group. And thank God for Ron DeSantis being a real politician and standing up for American freedoms. So what do you guys think about this? I think this is real good. And God bless this group for doing what they're doing. What do you think about this article? What do you think about this group? Leave your comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button, share this video, and subscribe. God bless you all, and see you again on another Black Conservative with Ryan Bowling.